Today we're going to make some connections between what we've been learning about rearranging equations and literal equations and make a connection to graphing. So what we're going to do is we're going to take these equations and you'll notice that they are maybe look a little unfamiliar, but they have an x and a y. And what we're going to be doing is writing the equation in slope-intercept form. So remember, slope-intercept form is y equals mx plus b. And so we're going to be taking each equation and we're going to be rearranging it using the same skills that we use to solve literal equations, but we're solving for a y, right? Because what we want is y by itself, and then a number times x, and then plus a number. So we'll try to make each of these equations look like this. Once we do that, we're going to box the slope and circle the y-intercept, and that's going to help us when we try to graph it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to box and circle up here so that I remember to do that. So let's look at the first example. So I want y by itself. So what should I do first? Well, there's a 3 with the y, and then there's also this 6x. The 6x is being added, and the 3 is being multiplied. We always take care of addition and subtraction first. So let's get rid of the 6x. I'm going to subtract it from both sides. 3y equals. And notice I could put negative 9 minus 6x or negative 6x minus 9. Those are the same thing, as long as I make sure the signs stay attached. But I want to put the term with the x first, because what I want it to look like is number times x plus a number. So I'm going to put the negative 6x first, and then the 9. And notice, like, this one's negative, so I made sure to bring the negative sign with it. This one's negative, I made sure to bring the negative sign with it. So just make sure the sign stays attached to the number. And then what's left to do to get y by itself? Well, right now y is being multiplied by 3, so let's undo that by dividing by 3. And I divide by 3 on both sides, and so what we're used to doing is writing it like this, just once. But I think it just makes it a little bit easier as we're learning this to realize that when you divide on both sides of the equation, you divide the whole side of the equation. So you're actually dividing this term by 3 and this term by 3. And so you can just write divided by 3 once, it's fine. But just visually, it's a little bit easier for me to see it when I write it twice, like that. So up to you, but I'm going to write it like this just because then it allows me to focus on this and then this sort of like one at a time. So y equals, this is negative 6 divided by 3. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Negative divided by positive is a negative, and that's negative 2x. And negative 9 divided by 3 is negative 3. So this is my equation in slope-intercept form, and then I'm going to box the slope. The slope is negative 2, and circle the y-intercept. The y-intercept is negative 3. Notice I didn't box x. The slope is not negative 2x. It's just negative 2. Okay, so this is the slope, and this is the y-intercept, which will make it really easy to graph later, right? I'll just start at the y-intercept, and then I'll rise and run. Next example. This one looks a little bit different. And what's interesting is y is actually almost by itself already. There's just this plus 5 with it. But then over here I have these parentheses, which is not what I want, right? I don't want parentheses in my slope-intercept form. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of the parentheses by just distributing that 3. And then I'll come over here and get rid of that 5. So first I'm going to distribute. Just bring down the y plus 5. 3 times x is 3x. 3 times negative 7 is negative 21. And then next thing is to get the y by itself, and there's a plus 5 with it, so I'm going to subtract 5. And I get y equals 3x negative 21 minus 5. So that's 21 negatives and another 5 negatives, so that's a total of 26 negatives. And that looks good. Y equals mx plus b. So my slope is 3, and my y-intercept is negative 26. Next example. Okay, this one looks kind of like this one, right? And so what I'm going to do first, if I want y by itself, is to get rid of the term with the x. So I'm going to subtract 5x. Okay, and I'm going to bring down, notice this is a negative 3y. I'm going to bring down the negative 3. Here, some of you are going to be tempted to do 12 minus 5, but these are not like terms, right? Just like up here, they were not like terms. So you can't combine them. This has an x, this doesn't, so you keep them separate. And I'm going to put the term with the x on the left. Okay. And then to get y by itself, I got to divide by this -3. Make sure you divide by the negative. And I'm going to do it on both terms over here as well. So that cancels. I'm left with y equals. Now, -5 divided by -3. That doesn't divide evenly. So I'm going to be left with a fraction here. So the first thing I notice is that a negative divided by negative is a positive. So it's going to be positive. And then 5 over 3 is a fraction, and it just stays a fraction. It's going to be 5 over 3x. And then 12 divided by -3 is -4. And so then I'm good. This is y equals mx plus b. My y-intercept is -4. And my slope is 5/3. Next problem. So this one, it looks kind of like this one, but with some twists, right? So first of all, the first thing I notice is this y minus -7. And so whenever I have a minus and negative like this, like that double negative, that actually just becomes a plus, right? Because minus and negative is the same thing as adding. So I'm going to rewrite that as y plus 7. And then I'm going to distribute. Okay, and I am distributing a fraction, but that's okay. We're going to be okay. 1/4 times x is 1/4 x. And this is 1/4 times 4. So come off the side and do it here. This is 1/4 times, and then 4 as a fraction is 4 over 1. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 1 is 4. 4 divided by 4 is 1. So 1/4 times 4 is 1. Okay, and then the only thing left to do is to get y by itself. So it's 7's being added right now, so let's get rid of it. Subtract 7. And if I'm subtracting 7 on this side, I don't subtract it from here. Those aren't like terms, right? I subtract it from here. This is +1 minus 7, right? So that's +1 minus 7. And so these cancel, and I'm left with 6 negatives. Okay, and then I'm going to box the slope and circle the y-intercept. Okay. So just to be clear about one thing that can be a little bit confusing, if I add or subtract something from both sides, like here when I subtracted the 7, I do it with like terms. So for example, I subtracted 7, I subtract the 7 from the 1, but not from the 1/4 x. So if I add or subtract, it's like terms. But if I divide or multiply on both sides, I have to do it to the entire side. So here, I divided this term by -3, and I have to divide both of these terms by -3. So multiplying and dividing, it happens to the whole equation. And when you add and subtract, you just add and subtract from the like terms, right? So like the 7 minus the 7, that was just like this column. It didn't impact the y. And then here when I subtracted the 7, it didn't impact the 1/4 x. Okay, so now it's your turn.